So one of the questions that I got a lot from those that follow me on Twitter and on Cape Town, etc., was what does the scene look like? I know that there have been diagrams similar to this that have circulated, but some of them were quite difficult for even me to understand. And I have actually watched the crime scene video where Captain Hitchcock walked us through the entire crime scene on that morning prior to collecting evidence to show exactly what the scene looked like before the police started collecting evidence. So I kind of used my recollection, and I sat with one of the designers at Cape Town, etc. And that is how we created this diagram to try and make it easier to explain exactly where everything was, because it made a lot more sense to me on the different versions when I saw the crime scene, and I wanted to explain it to you. So now at the close of the state's case, I have on the diagram indicated some important parts of evidence that I'd just like to talk you through. So what we have is we've got our ground floor here and our top floor here, and I've tagged important parts that I'd like to speak about. So one of the things is this is the entrance of the Van Breda home, and immediately as you enter the home, there is a dining room table which had a laptop, and I've tagged a laptop, and it had a handbag on it. The handbag was actually open and not really disturbed, and nothing was removed from the handbag. We know that nothing was removed from the house that evening, but what is surprising, and Kleinhans confirmed this, is that if there were intruders, if we believe Henry's version, it's strange that they wouldn't even take something as easily accessible as a handbag sitting on a table that if they'd entered from the front entrance, they would have bypassed. And even if they'd exited, this is the stairs which Henry alleged they ran down, or one of the attackers ran down, they would have gone past this handbag to exit out the kitchen door. So it was certainly in the path of the alleged intruders, as Henry has said. Another aspect was these cigarettes that were lying on the floor in the kitchen, and there was also a bottle of red wine on this counter. This is where Henry made the emergency phone call. And then in the kitchen there was the drawers that were opened on this side, and they were the drawers which contained the knives. And the pantry where the household axe was kept was over here, near the kitchen back door where we believe the intruders exited. Another aspect with regards to having an intruder fleeing the scene is that there were two luxury motor vehicles in the garage which the intruders elected not to use when they fled the scene. And then if we are to go upstairs, we have This is the middle landing. So you go up the stairs here, you have the axe that was found on the middle landing. Now, there's a lot of talking points about this axe, whether it was thrown or whether it was hit into the wall. The state's version on the axe landing up on the staircase here, supported by the blood spatter expert, is that this axe was hit into this wall by a controlled hand, and that this indicated that it was probably staged behavior. And there he explained staged behavior as when a perpetrator of a crime sets up the scene or alters it so that it doesn't look as if they committed the crime. The defense then says that this axe was thrown from the top of the stair, because we all know, going back to Henry's version, and we've placed Henry in the bathroom here where he alleges he was standing when Rudy, who was attacked here, his body was found there, and Martin, who was attacked here, his body was found there. When Henry ran out of this room, going back to throwing the axe, he said that he chased the attacker who ran down the stairs, and Henry could not, he realized he wouldn't catch up with the attacker. So at this point, probably, he can't pinpoint it, but probably around here, he had sight of the attacker and he threw the axe towards him, and that's why the axe landed there. He was throwing it, directing it, so he said it was a uncontrolled throw of the axe when it hit there, and it missed the intruder who left. And an interesting point to note was that the blood spatter expert did say that if Henry was standing here, there was a distance measured from here to here, and Henry could see his attacker, that he probably would have been close enough to hit his attacker instead of throwing the axe. Teresa is found here at the entrance of the bedroom, and it's not really disputed that Teresa was attacked in the doorway of the bedroom. And then Marilee was not actually found here. We recently found out that her legs were in the doorway of the bedroom, this being Rudy and Henry's bedroom, and that Teresa and Marilee were probably attacked from an attacker who came from within the boys' bedroom, because their legs were actually facing in this direction towards the bedroom door. And then when we came in the room, Martin was found on Rudy's bed. He had entered the bed from his left-hand side and was attacked from behind. He had wounds on his back and his neck, and no defensive wounds, so didn't seem to be aware of the imminent attack. Rudy was actually attacked in this bed at first, but this is not where his final resting position was. He was found lying over here with his legs towards Henry's bathroom and his head towards the bottom of Henry's bed, with a duvet allegedly from Henry's bed wrapped up next to him. Now, the crime scene blood expert has said that he believes that Rudy was moved from the bed by his attacker, moved from the bed, handled in the middle of the two beds because a lot of blood pooling had occurred from Rudy here, and then moved to his final position here. His head had also touched this bathroom wall, so he was moved quite a bit, and that this duvet had been placed near Rudy after the fact because there was a lot of blood marks that had pooled, that had been swiped, and contact transfers underneath the duvet, indicating that it was thrown there after the attacks. Henry, he was in the bathroom. He woke up, he went to bed quite late that night. Rudy had been sleeping. He woke up and he then went to the bathroom to relieve himself, and he then heard noises inside the bathroom. He had his cell phone with him. He put it in his pocket, pulled up his pants, and he came towards the door, opened the door, and that is when he saw an attacker, he says, standing here, attacking his brother Rudy here. He screamed for help. The light went on. Martin, who would have, on Henry's version, come from his bedroom over here, would have gotten out of this bedroom, ran down the passage straight into the room. He then entered the bed from this side. On Henry's version, he was doing a rugby tackle over the bed, which is why he was hit from behind, towards the intruder. So he went with his head first towards the intruder, and that is when he was hit and his body immediately went limp. Henry then says that the intruder, who was standing here when he attacked both Martin and Rudy, which corroborates with the defense, who also says that the attacker, they allege being Henry, was standing here at the time of both of those attacks. The intruder, on Henry's version, then left while Henry simply stood here and watched him leave. And he then went out here, and Henry couldn't see what was happening here. And the blood evidence actually corroborates Henry's version, because he didn't have any of Marilee's DNA on him, and he didn't any blood from Marilee, so he probably wasn't near her attack, is what the defense is saying. And Teresa, he didn't have as much blood from Teresa as he had from Rudy and Martin. Teresa's blood was just part of a mixture on his shorts, and there was one blood spot on one of his socks, which the state says means that he was near when she was attacked. But I think that there's a fair amount of doubt in whether or not he was in fact near when these two were attacked. So Henry's version is that the intruder went out, he attacked Teresa here, and then he came back into the room, and it is about here where Rudy was still in bed at the time, that Henry was standing around between the two beds when him and the alleged intruder had an altercation. And then Henry pulled the knife out, which landed partially underneath the bed of Rudy. And then that's when he ran after his attacker, who fled the room, down the stairs. Henry noticed Marilee was already lying there, so she'd been attacked. possibly while he was fighting off the intruder in here. And the intruder ran down the stairs and out, and Henry then tried to chase him. Henry then fell down the stairs, and when he got up, he was downstairs, and he followed the attackers out, what he assumed were 2 attackers. And it was at this stage that he confirmed that he heard 2 voices, and he knew for certain that there must have been 2 people in the house. He then thinks that they fled out the back door because the back door in the kitchen was open. He ran out the house, he couldn't see anything, so he went back in. He went back up the stairs, and he says that when he saw his mother and his sister, he passed out on the stairs. And we know from bloodstain evidence that his defense team has advised that he passed out around here on the top of these stairs. So that was Henry's version. When he later comes to, he goes down the stairs and he has a few cigarettes and made the emergency call. Let's assume Henry's version is true, and that an attacker who had just attacked Martin, Rudy, Marilee and Teresa had then fled down the stairs. Surely he would have had some or other bloodied object that would have left behind blood drops. So there weren't any blood drops, and the spatter expert has confirmed this. The only blood drops that were found, and the defense have been holding on very tightly to those blood drops, is these 2 that were on the adjacent property wall outside. Now, these 2 blood drops were probably about that long, 2 of them like that. One of them has, they aren't sure whose DNA it is, but the other, and it's probably similar DNA, was Rudy's DNA. So this was found on the adjacent wall. On this diagram, I would put it around here. Before you left the property, there was a black gate over here which came onto the street. 2 blood drops found there, which the expert says probably came from when Rudy was attacked in his bed here. His blood actually shot out the window, and we now go to the ground floor and landed on the wall on the first floor. The defense has also said, well, if somebody was running with a bloodied object, perhaps a hand covered in blood or another axe covered in blood, past this wall, they could have also dropped those blood drops of Rudy's blood there. So that is just a summary of those that don't want to hear all the detail, just to give you a view of what we know to date on the state's case regarding the crime scene diagram. For live updates from court as this trial unfolds, follow me on Twitter. My handle is @TraceyAMS.